The music pounded through the speakers of Murphy's Bar, a popular hangout spot just outside Naval Base San Diego. The Friday night crowd was thick with off-duty military personnel, college students, and locals looking to unwind after a long week. In one corner booth, 4 Navy SEALs sat nursing their beers, their conversation animated as they discussed their upcoming deployment. Lieutenant Jake Morrison ran his hand through his short brown hair, leaning forward to be heard over the music. "I'm telling you guys, this mission is going to be different. Command has been keeping everything under wraps. All we know is, we're heading to the Middle East, and our new commanding officer is supposed to be some hotshot with an impeccable record." Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez laughed, taking a swig of his beer. "Come on, Jake. They always say that about the new brass. Remember Lieutenant Commander Phillips? Guy couldn't find his way out of a paper bag, let alone lead a covert operation." The third member of their group, Petty Officer Tommy Chen, nodded in agreement. "Marcus is right. These desk jockeys get promoted based on politics, not field experience. I bet this new commander has never even seen real combat." Their fourth companion, Petty Officer Alex Turner, was busy scanning the crowded bar. His eyes stopped on a woman sitting alone at a small table near the bar. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, and a fitted black t-shirt, and seemed completely absorbed in the book she was reading, occasionally taking sips from what looked like a glass of water. "Check out the bookworm," Alex said, nodding in her direction. "Who reads at a bar on Friday night?" Jake followed his gaze and shrugged. "Maybe she's waiting for someone. Or maybe she just likes the atmosphere. Some people are weird like that." The woman was actually Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, though none of the 4 SEALs had any way of knowing this. At 32, she had already established herself as one of the most respected special operations commanders in the Navy. Her record included 3 successful deployments in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and a classified mission in Eastern Europe that had earned her a Navy Cross, one of the highest decorations for valor. Sarah had chosen to come to Murphy's Bar specifically because it was frequented by the personnel she would soon be commanding. She wanted to observe them in their natural environment, away from the formal structure of the base. It was an unconventional approach, but Sarah had learned that understanding her team's dynamics outside of official duties often provided valuable insights into how they might perform under pressure. She had been reading the same page of her novel for the past 10 minutes, her attention divided between the words on the page and the conversations happening around her. Years of training had honed her ability to blend into her surroundings while remaining acutely aware of everything happening in her vicinity. Marcus gestured toward Sarah with his beer bottle. "I bet she's one of those military wives, probably waiting for her husband to get back from deployment. Poor thing doesn't know how to have fun anymore." Tommy laughed. "Or maybe she's a civilian contractor. You know how they are, all serious and bookish. Probably works in intelligence or something equally boring." Meanwhile, across the bar, a group of college students had been steadily working their way through a pitcher of beer. The 4 young men, clearly celebrating something, had grown increasingly boisterous as the evening progressed. Their table was littered with empty glasses and crumpled napkins, and their voices had grown loud enough to draw annoyed glances from nearby patrons. The apparent leader of the group, a tall blonde wearing a university football jersey, stood up unsteadily. "Guys, I'm going to get us another round. This place is awesome." He grabbed the empty pitcher and began weaving his way toward the bar, his coordination clearly compromised by alcohol. The college student's path took him directly past Sarah's table. She glanced up briefly as he approached, noting his unsteady gait and the strong smell of alcohol that preceded him. Her training automatically kicked in, and she tensed slightly, preparing for potential trouble. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The student, trying to navigate around a chair that had been pushed out from a nearby table, stumbled slightly. The pitcher in his hands, still containing the dregs of beer and melted ice, flew forward in a wide arc. The contents splashed directly across Sarah's table, soaking her book, her clothes, and sending ice cubes skittering across the floor. The bar seemed to pause for a moment, the immediate area falling silent as patrons turned to see what had happened. Sarah sat perfectly still, water and beer dripping from her hair and face, her ruined book lying open on the now soaked table. "Oh man. I'm so sorry," the student slurred, swaying slightly as he looked down at the mess he'd created. "I didn't mean to. I didn't see. Are you okay?" Before Sarah could respond, the four SEALs had risen from their booth and approached the scene. Jake stepped forward, his protective instincts kicking in despite not knowing the woman who'd been drenched. "Hey, buddy, you need to watch where you're going," Jake said firmly, placing himself between the student and Sarah. "Look at what you did to this lady." The college student's friends had noticed the commotion and came over to retrieve their companion. "Sorry about Brad," one of them said apologetically. "He's been celebrating his acceptance to law school a little too hard tonight. We'll take care of this." Marcus had moved to Sarah's side and was offering her napkins from a nearby dispenser. "Here. Let me help you clean up. That guy's a complete idiot." Sarah accepted the napkins with a slight smile, her composure remaining remarkably intact despite being thoroughly soaked. "Thank you." Accidents happen. Tommy had taken charge of clearing the ice cubes from the floor to prevent anyone from slipping, while Alex helped move chairs away from the wet area. The four SEALs worked with the efficient coordination that came from years of training together, though they had no idea they were assisting their future commanding officer. "Can we buy you another drink?" Jake offered, still keeping a protective stance near Sarah. "And maybe get you a towel or something?" "You're absolutely soaked." Sarah stood up slowly, wringing out the bottom of her t-shirt. Her movements were controlled and graceful, with an athletic confidence that spoke of extensive physical training. "That's very kind of you. But I think I should probably head home and get cleaned up." The bartender had appeared with a mop and additional towels, clearly accustomed to dealing with spills in the crowded establishment. "I'm really sorry about this, miss. That group's been pushing their luck all night. Can I get you anything?" "On the house, of course. Just the check for my water, please," Sarah replied politely. "And thank you for your help," she added, addressing the four SEALs who were still hovering nearby, clearly concerned about her welfare. As Sarah gathered her ruined book and prepared to leave, Marcus couldn't help but comment, "You're taking this really well. Most people would be furious right now." Sarah paused, looking at the four men who had rushed to her aid without hesitation. She could see the genuine concern in their eyes, the automatic response to help someone in need. It spoke well of their character, confirming some of the positive things she'd read in their service records. "Getting angry wouldn't change anything," she said simply. "Besides, it's just clothes and a book. Nothing that can't be replaced." Alex shook his head admiringly. "That's a great attitude. Your husband's a lucky guy." Sarah's smile was enigmatic as she shouldered her small purse. "I'm not married. But thank you again for your help. All of you." As she walked toward the exit, the four SEALs watched her go, impressed by her grace under pressure. They returned to their booth, the incident having provided them with something new to discuss. "Now that's a woman who's got her act together," Jake said, settling back into his seat. "Did you see how calm she stayed? Most people would have been screaming or crying." "Yeah, there was something different about her," Marcus agreed. "The way she carried herself, the way she handled the situation. Almost like she's used to dealing with stressful situations." Tommy nodded thoughtfully. "She moved like someone with training. Did you notice how she got up? Very controlled. Very aware of her surroundings. I bet she's military." "Could be," Alex said. "Or maybe she's just one of those naturally cool people. Either way, I'm glad we helped her out. That drunk college kid could have been a real problem." The conversation eventually drifted back to their upcoming deployment and speculation about their new commanding officer. None of them had any idea that they had just met the person who would be leading them into one of the most dangerous missions of their careers. Sarah drove home to her apartment, her clothes still damp and smelling of beer. As she parked her car and walked up the stairs to her front door, she reflected on what she had observed at the bar. The four SEALs had reacted exactly as she would have hoped. Quickly, protectively, and without hesitation. Their instinct to help a stranger in need spoke well of their character, and suggested they would work well as a team. She had been planning to introduce herself to her new team the following Monday morning, but the evening's events had given her valuable insight into their personalities. Lieutenant Morrison appeared to be a natural leader, stepping forward to handle the situation. Petty Officer Rodriguez showed strong, supportive instincts, immediately offering practical help. Chen demonstrated attention to detail and safety awareness by clearing the ice from the floor, while Turner showed good situational awareness and backup support. As she changed into dry clothes and made herself a cup of tea, Sarah smiled to herself. The mission briefing she would give them on Monday was going to be very interesting indeed. She wondered how long it would take them to realize that the bookworm they had rescued was actually their new commanding officer. Monday morning arrived with the typical bustle of activity at Naval Base San Diego. The 4 SEALs who had spent their Friday evening at Murphy's Bar reported to Briefing Room Alpha at exactly 0800 hours, their uniforms crisp and their attitudes professional despite the lingering effects of their weekend activities. Lieutenant Morrison straightened his shoulders as he led his team down the sterile hallway toward their meeting with their new commanding officer. The anticipation had been building all weekend, with rumors and speculation running rampant through the barracks about who would be leading their upcoming mission. "Remember what I told you guys," Jake said quietly as they approached the briefing room door. "First impressions matter. This new CO could make or break our careers. So let's show them what we're made of." Marcus adjusted his uniform one final time. "Think they'll tell us where we're actually going today? All this secrecy is starting to get on my nerves. Wherever it is, it's gotta be big," Tommy replied. "They don't usually assign brand new commanding officers to routine operations." Alex checked his watch as they reached the door. 0800 on the dot. "At least we're punctual." Jake knocked twice on the door and waited for permission to enter. A clear, authoritative voice called out, "Enter." The 4 SEALs filed into the room in order of rank, coming to attention just inside the doorway. The briefing room was standard military issue: fluorescent lighting, gray walls, and a large table surrounded by metal chairs. At the far end of the room, a figure stood with their back to the door, studying a map mounted on the wall. "Team reporting as ordered, sir," Jake announced formally. The figure at the map turned around, and all 4 SEALs felt their jaws drop simultaneously. Standing before them, wearing crisp navy dress blues, with lieutenant commander's stripes clearly visible, was the woman they had helped at Murphy's Bar on Friday night. Her auburn hair was now neatly arranged in a regulation bun, and her green eyes held a hint of amusement as she watched their reactions. "At ease, gentlemen," Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell said, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of command. "Please, take a seat." The 4 men exchanged stunned glances as they moved to the table, their minds racing to process this unexpected development. The composed woman who had handled being drenched with beer and ice water with such grace was their new commanding officer. Sarah allowed them a moment to settle before addressing the elephant in the room. "I believe we've already met. Though not under official circumstances, I want to thank you again for your assistance Friday evening. It was quite enlightening." Marcus was the first to find his voice. "Ma'am, we had no idea you were—" "Of course you didn't," Sarah interrupted gently. "That was rather the point. I make it a practice to observe my teams in informal settings before we begin working together. It provides valuable insight into character and team dynamics that personnel files can't capture." Jake felt heat creeping up his neck as he recalled some of their conversation about their new commanding officer. "Ma'am, if we said anything inappropriate about our new CO, we meant no disrespect." Sarah's smile was understanding rather than reproachful. "Lieutenant Morrison, your concerns about leadership based on field experience versus political advancement are actually quite valid. It shows you care about the mission and your team's safety. However, let me put those concerns to rest." She moved to a projector and pulled up her service record on the wall screen. The list of deployments, commendations, and successful operations was impressive, but it was the classified missions marked only with dates and locations that truly caught their attention. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, 1 in Syria, and several other operations I'm not at liberty to discuss in detail, Sarah continued. "I've led 17 successful special operations missions with 0 casualties under my direct command. I've been shot at, bombed, and have had to extract my teams from situations that officially never happened. The room fell silent as the 4 SEALs absorbed this information. The woman they had dismissed as a possible military wife or civilian contractor was clearly one of the most experienced special operations commanders they had ever encountered. Tommy leaned forward slightly. "Ma'am, how did you... I mean, the Navy SEALs are typically a male-only unit." "An excellent question, Petty Officer Chen," Sarah replied. "I'm not technically a SEAL, though I've completed much of the same training. I'm part of a specialized joint operations unit that works closely with SEAL teams, Delta Force, and other special operations groups. Think of me as your mission coordinator and field commander." Alex couldn't help but ask, "Were you really reading a book at the bar? Or was that part of your cover?" Sarah laughed, the sound surprising them with its genuine warmth. "I was actually reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I make it a point to review classic military strategy before beginning new operations. Though I admit, I wasn't making much progress with all the interesting conversations happening around me." The ice broken, Sarah moved to the heart of their meeting. "Now, let's discuss why you're here. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. You are not to discuss any of this outside of authorized personnel." She clicked to the next slide, showing a map of eastern Syria. "Your mission will take place in a region controlled by a terrorist organization that has been developing chemical weapons. Intelligence suggests they're planning an attack on civilian targets within the next 30 days. Jake straightened in his chair, his earlier embarrassment forgotten as he focused on the tactical situation. "What's our objective, ma'am?" "Primary objective is to locate and neutralize the chemical weapons facility. Secondary objective is to extract a high-value intelligence asset who's been providing information about the organization's plans. The asset's cover has been compromised, and we have a narrow window for extraction." Marcus studied the map intently. "What kind of resistance should we expect?" "Heavy," Sarah replied without hesitation. "The facility is protected by approximately 40 trained fighters, plus civilian hostages being used as human shields. The extraction point for our intelligence asset is in the middle of a heavily populated area. This mission requires precision, stealth, and the ability to adapt quickly when things don't go according to plan." "And they always don't," Tommy muttered, earning a sharp look from Jake. Sarah heard the comment and nodded. "Petty Officer Chen is absolutely correct. No plan survives contact with the enemy, which is why I need a team that can think on their feet and trust each other implicitly. Based on what I observed Friday night, I believe you 4 work well together." She moved to another slide showing personnel files. "Lieutenant Morrison, your record shows exceptional leadership under pressure and a talent for tactical improvisation. Petty Officer Rodriguez, your marksmanship scores are in the top 5% of all naval personnel, and you have extensive experience with demolitions. Petty Officer Chen, your communication and technical skills are outstanding. Plus, you speak fluent Arabic. Petty Officer Turner, your medical training and psychological profiling abilities make you invaluable for both combat situations and intelligence gathering." The 4 SEALs exchanged glances, impressed despite themselves. Their new commanding officer had clearly done her homework. "When do we deploy, ma'am?" Jake asked. "We leave in 72 hours, Sarah replied. "That gives us 3 days for intensive mission-specific training and team integration exercises. I won't lie to you. This is going to be dangerous. The kind of mission where split-second decisions mean the difference between success and catastrophe." She paused, studying each of their faces. "I need to know right now if anyone has reservations about taking orders from me. This isn't the time for ego or preconceived notions about gender roles in combat. If you can't follow my lead without question, I need to know now so I can request different personnel." The 4 men looked at each other, and Jake spoke for the group. "Ma'am, after what we've learned this morning, I think we'd be honored to serve under your command. Your record speaks for itself." "Good," Sarah said, clicking to the next slide. "Because tomorrow morning at 0500, we begin the most intensive 3 days of training any of you have ever experienced. We'll be simulating every aspect of this mission until you can execute it in your sleep." She moved to a tactical board and began sketching out preliminary plans. The insertion will be via helicopter at a landing zone 12 kilometers from the target. We'll approach on foot through mountainous terrain, establish a forward observation post, and conduct reconnaissance for 24 hours before beginning our approach to the facility. As Sarah outlined the mission parameters, the 4 SEALs found themselves increasingly impressed with her tactical knowledge and attention to detail. She had clearly spent considerable time studying satellite imagery, intelligence reports, and weather patterns for their area of operations. "The chemical weapons facility is housed in what appears to be a converted school building," she continued. "Intelligence suggests the weapons are stored in the basement level, with the main laboratory on the 2nd floor. Our asset will be held in a separate building, approximately 200 meters away." Marcus raised his hand. "Ma'am, what's our extraction plan if things go sideways?" "Excellent question. We have 2 primary extraction points and 3 backup locations. In a worst-case scenario, we'll have to make our way to the coast for maritime pickup. The entire operation is designed with multiple contingencies because, as Petty Officer Chen correctly noted, something always goes wrong." The briefing continued for another hour, with Sarah answering detailed questions about equipment, communications protocols, and rules of engagement. By the time she dismissed them, the 4 SEALs had developed a deep respect for their new commanding officer's professionalism and expertise. As they filed out of the briefing room, Alex couldn't help but comment, "I feel like we should apologize for underestimating her at the bar." "I think she knew exactly what she was doing," Tommy replied. "The whole thing was a test, and we probably passed by helping her out." Jake paused at the door and looked back at Sarah, who was still studying the mission plans. "Ma'am, thank you for giving us this opportunity. We won't let you down." Sarah looked up from her papers and smiled. "I know you won't, Lieutenant. See you at 0500 tomorrow. And gentlemen, get a good night's sleep. It's the last one you'll have for quite a while." The helicopter's rotor blades cut through the night air with a rhythmic thump that had become as familiar as a heartbeat to the 5-person team seated in the aircraft's cargo bay. 3 weeks had passed since their initial briefing, and the intensive training had transformed the 4 SEALs and their commanding officer into a cohesive unit that moved and thought as one entity. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell checked her watch in the dim red light of the helicopter's interior. They were 30 minutes out from their insertion point in the rugged mountains of eastern Syria. The mission that had seemed daunting in the sterile environment of the briefing room was now about to become deadly reality. Jake Morrison sat across from her, his face painted with camouflage and his eyes focused on the mission ahead. The past 3 weeks had completely changed his perspective on leadership and what it meant to serve under a truly exceptional commanding officer. The woman who had calmly endured being drenched with beer had proven herself to be one of the most tactically brilliant and mentally tough leaders he had ever encountered. During their training, Sarah had pushed them beyond their limits, creating scenarios that seemed impossible and demanding they find solutions anyway. She had crawled through mud beside them, outshot Marcus on the rifle range, and demonstrated hand-to-hand combat techniques that left even the physically imposing Tommy impressed and slightly bruised. 5 minutes to insertion, the pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. Sarah gave a thumbs up to acknowledge the warning and looked at each member of her team. Marcus Rodriguez was checking his specialized sniper rifle for the 100th time, his usually jovial demeanor replaced by the intense focus that had made him one of the Navy's most deadly marksmen. Tommy Chen was running through final equipment checks on their communication gear, his technical expertise having proved invaluable during planning sessions. Alex Turner sat quietly reviewing the psychological profile of their intelligence asset, preparing himself for what could be a challenging extraction of someone who had been undercover for months. "Remember," Sarah said through the team communication system, "this isn't training anymore. The people we're going up against are professionals who won't hesitate to kill us if they get the chance. Trust your training, trust each other, and follow the plan, unless I give you specific orders to deviate." The helicopter began its descent toward their landing zone, a small clearing in the mountainous terrain that would provide them with concealment while remaining close enough to their target for a rapid approach. Intelligence had confirmed that the terrorist organization was indeed developing chemical weapons in the converted school building, and their asset had transmitted final confirmation of the facility's layout just hours before going silent. 30 seconds, the pilot announced. The team stood and moved toward the helicopter's door, their movements synchronized from weeks of practice. Each member carried specialized equipment suited to their role in the mission, but all were cross-trained on every piece of gear in case of casualties or equipment failure. Sarah was first out of the helicopter, dropping to one knee and scanning the terrain for threats, while her team deployed around her in a defensive perimeter. The night was unusually quiet, with only the distant sound of the helicopter fading as it departed for its holding position 50 kilometers away. "Perimeter secure," Jake reported through their radio system. "Moving to Rally Point Alpha," Sarah responded, rising and beginning the trek toward their forward observation post. The team moved through the darkness with practiced stealth, their night vision equipment turning the rocky terrain into a green-tinted landscape of shadows and obstacles. They covered the 12 kilometers to their observation post in under 3 hours, maintaining complete noise discipline and stopping frequently to check for signs of enemy activity. Their observation post was a cave system that intelligence had identified as abandoned, but strategically positioned to provide visual coverage of both the chemical weapons facility and the building where their asset was being held. Sarah established watch rotations while the team prepared their equipment for the mission's next phase. Through high-powered optics, they could see the target buildings clearly. The converted school was a 2-story concrete structure surrounded by an 8-foot wall, topped with razor wire. Guards patrolled the perimeter in predictable patterns, their discipline suggesting professional training rather than the typical militia fighters they had expected to encounter. "Count 12 external guards," Marcus reported from his sniper position, rotating in 4-hour shifts. They're carrying AK-47 seconds and sidearms, standard body armor. Tommy had set up his communication equipment and was monitoring radio traffic from the facility, picking up regular check-ins every 30 minutes. They're using code words, but the timing is consistent with what intelligence predicted. Sarah studied the facility through her binoculars, noting details that hadn't been visible in satellite photos. The basement windows have been bricked up from the inside. Confirms that's where they're storing the chemical weapons. "We need to approach from the east side where there's a service entrance with minimal exposure." Alex had been studying the building where their intelligence asset was believed to be held. The target building shows signs of recent reinforcement. Steel plates over the windows, additional locks on the doors. Our asset is definitely being held there, probably under guard. The team spent 24 hours conducting detailed reconnaissance, mapping guard rotations, identifying weak points in the facility's defenses, and planning their approach routes. Sarah's tactical planning proved exceptional as she accounted for dozens of variables that could affect their mission's success. "We go tonight," Sarah announced as evening approached. "Primary assault team will be Morrison, Rodriguez, and myself. Chen and Turner will provide overwatch and be ready to extract our asset while we're securing the chemical weapons." The plan was elegantly simple but required precise execution. Marcus would eliminate the perimeter guards with silent sniper fire, creating a window for the assault team to breach the facility. Meanwhile, Tommy and Alex would approach the detention building and prepare to extract their intelligence asset the moment the main assault began. As darkness fell, the team moved into position. Sarah felt the familiar calm that descended over her before combat operations, her training and experience pushing aside any doubts or fears. Beside her, Jake and Marcus showed the same professional composure that had impressed her during their initial training. "All teams in position," Tommy reported through their communication system. "Begin operation," Sarah commanded. Marcus's rifle whispered twice, and 2 guards dropped silently to the ground. Jake and Sarah moved quickly across the open ground, toward the facility's service entrance. Their movements coordinated to avoid the remaining guards' lines of sight. The service entrance was secured with a heavy lock that Sarah defeated with a small explosive charge that made no more noise than a large book dropping. They slipped inside the building, their night vision revealing a hallway that matched the intelligence reports perfectly. "Chemical storage is downstairs," Sarah whispered to Jake. "I'll secure the laboratory on the 2nd floor. Plant your charges and get out." Jake nodded, and disappeared toward the basement stairs, while Sarah began her ascent to the laboratory level. The building's interior was eerily quiet, with only the distant sound of Tommy and Alex beginning their assault on the detention facility. Sarah found the laboratory exactly where intelligence had predicted: tables filled with chemical equipment, computers displaying formulas and production schedules, and sealed containers that clearly held the finished chemical weapons. She quickly planted demolition charges and began photographing documents that could provide intelligence about other facilities or planned attacks. "Basement secured," Jake reported. "Charges set. Ready for extraction." "Copy that," Sarah replied, finishing her documentation and arming her own demolition charges. Moving to extraction point. As she turned to leave the laboratory, Sarah heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was approaching. And from the sound, it was more than one person. She pressed herself against the wall beside the door and waited. 3 armed fighters entered the laboratory, clearly investigating the disturbance caused by the service entrance breach. Sarah allowed them to move past her position before stepping into the doorway behind them. "Drop your weapons," she commanded in Arabic. The fighters spun toward her voice, but Sarah's training and superior position gave her an insurmountable advantage. 2 quick bursts from her suppressed rifle eliminated the immediate threat, but she knew their discovery meant the mission timeline had just accelerated dramatically. "Contact in the lab," she reported to her team. "Accelerating extraction timeline." "Roger," came Jake's reply. "Exiting the basement now." Meanwhile, Tommy and Alex had successfully breached the detention building and located their intelligence asset. The man was in poor condition after weeks of captivity and interrogation, but he was conscious and able to move with assistance. "Package secured," Alex reported. Moving to extraction point, Sarah met Jake at the building's service entrance, just as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Their presence had been discovered, and they now had minutes before the entire area would be swarming with hostile fighters. "Charges armed," Jake reported. 60 seconds to detonation. The team ran toward their planned extraction point, a clearing 500 meters from the facility where their helicopter would pick them up. Behind them, shouts and gunfire indicated that enemy forces were organizing a pursuit. Marcus provided covering fire from his overwatch position, his precision shooting disrupting the enemy's attempts to coordinate their response. "Multiple contacts pursuing extraction team," he reported. "Request immediate pickup. Helicopter inbound." The pilot's voice crackled through their radios. 2 minutes to pick up. The chemical weapons facility erupted in a massive explosion as Jake's charges detonated, sending a pillar of fire and smoke into the night sky. Secondary explosions followed as stored chemicals ignited, creating an inferno that would consume any evidence of the weapons program. Sarah's team reached the extraction point just as their helicopter appeared over the ridgeline. Enemy fighters were closing on their position, but Marcus's continued sniper fire and the team's disciplined retreat tactics kept them at bay. "Go, go, go!" Sarah shouted as the helicopter touched down. The team piled into the aircraft with their rescued intelligence asset, Marcus being the last aboard as he provided final covering fire. The helicopter lifted off just as enemy reinforcements arrived at the landing zone, their weapons fire sparking harmlessly off the aircraft's armored hull. As they flew toward safety, Sarah looked at her team with immense pride. The 4 SEALs who had helped a stranger clean up spilled beer 3 weeks earlier had just completed one of the most successful special operations missions in recent Navy history. "Mission accomplished," she reported to base command. Jake caught her eye and smiled. "Best commanding officer we've ever had, ma'am." Sarah thought back to that Friday night at Murphy's bar, when a simple act of kindness had started this whole journey. Sometimes the best insights into character came from the most unexpected circumstances. "Thank you, Lieutenant," she replied. "All of you. Outstanding work." The helicopter carried them through the night toward home, their mission complete and their bond as a team stronger than ever. The woman they had helped without knowing her identity had led them through one of the most dangerous operations of their careers, proving that true leadership was about character, competence, and earning respect through actions rather than rank. Years later, all 4 SEALs would look back on this mission as the defining moment of their military careers, not just because of its tactical success, but because it taught them that the most important qualities in a leader were often revealed in the simplest human interactions. The evening that began with spilled beer at a crowded bar had ended with the destruction of a terrorist weapons facility and the saving of countless innocent lives. Sarah had demonstrated that respect wasn't given because of rank or position, but earned through competence, character, and the willingness to put the mission and the team above personal considerations. The four men who had rushed to help a stranger in need had found themselves serving under one of the finest military leaders they would ever encounter, and the experience would shape their understanding of leadership, teamwork, and service for the rest of their lives.